carries a sound all of its own. A silence that isn't silence at all, but a whisper. A reminder that something stirs in the dark, even when the world remains still. An anniversary is coming soon. 10 years ago, this channel received an email from someone who Midnight Fears came to call Mr. Blank. Mr. Blank wasn't selling a story or a service. He wasn't chasing fame. He was a lone man in the shadows. One who claimed ties to white hats inside intelligence circles, and even the NSA. A man who had made a difference, striking against terrorism and organized crime in secret battles of wits. His motives were just. Midnight would have attested to that. But somewhere along the line, he saw too much. What he described was not a conspiracy of imagination, not fiction, not rumor. It was something much colder, something more organized. A faceless syndicate of government actors, corporations, foreign states, and rogue operatives. Not merely corrupt, but evil to the core, bent on destruction, acting in unison to achieving an end goal. And then he vanished. Now, 10 years later, we return to his words, not as a rerun, but as a new warning. Because what he revealed then now collides with headlines of today. His confessions are not echoes of the past. They are prophecies unfolding. And the question remains, how much of the future he described is still to come? Welcome back to Midnight Fears, where it is always midnight. And tonight, the confessions of a deep web hacker resurface after 10 years, coming true before our very eyes.
It began with a single message. The internet you know, he wrote, is only the puppet show. The real strings are pulled in darkness. Beneath the surface run networks unseen, where states, corporations, and syndicates trade in data as others trade in currency.
They're not just collecting data, they're crafting behavior.
10 years ago, that sounded extreme. Today, in the age of algorithms that predict and mold our every click, it is simply the world we live in. Social feeds decide what rises and what dies. A digital stage where we are the actors, unaware that the script has already been written.
Every aspect of your life is engineered. The media is all reading from the same script. There is no such thing as bias except evil. They will tell you how to feel and think, and you will obey, even if you don't believe you are. They decide who lives and who gets their organs harvested, but they plan to go too far, as some are aware and beginning to resist.
As his story unfolded, and he dove deeper, events grew darker. Threats, break-ins. He described laughter over phone lines. Intruders wearing suits and masks invade his home. Voices taunted him with their reach. He called them the Syndicate. And one night, they named themselves.
We are the Faceless. We control everything. The laws, the banks, the governments, and you.
To him, it was no longer theory. It was a declaration. Entire governments, corporations, even movements are woven into something larger, something faceless, something that laughed as it pulled the strings. He had lost almost everything, betrayed by those he most trusted and hunted by strangers. He spoke of corruption and theft on a mass scale, which no one could even conceive of at the time. He warned of the demented activities of the rich and powerful that were yet to reach the public's eye. The affluent reportedly organized to commit unspeakable acts that would make a normal person sick to their stomach, all done in a bid for power and control.
Entire groups online were built to test reactions. They engineer what dies.
He described communities not for connection, but for manipulation, built to study us like lab rats, to test our reactions, to decide which ideas lived and which were erased. At the time, it sounded like paranoia. Today, we call them disinformation campaigns, bot farms, influence operations. He warned of all of this long before it ever became a headline.
He spoke about stock market manipulation and how big firms tilt the scales against individual investors, claiming the elite systematically extract wealth from the masses during engineered market moves. In fact, I believe that my vanguard from Part 2 may have represented more than just a beloved wolf pet that protects its master. It may have been yet another one of his many cryptic messages hidden within the text that were completely overlooked at the time. He was an expert at doing that. This one may have possibly been pointing to a different sort of investing style that actually levels the playing field for normal people against the institutions. A ghost in the machine for investments, essentially. Stay until the very end if you're the type of person who may be interested in learning more about that sort of thing. He warned us that those who learned too much, dug too deep, or spoke too loudly would ultimately be silenced, and that freedom would soon become just an illusion if we weren't careful.
Toward the end, his words grew weary. He was tired, worn down, but his focus had sharpened. Buried within his final words, one phrase caught his attention. A phrase he never explained, only tagged like an ominous warning for the future.
I found references to something called Phase 3 adaptation. It was never explained, just tagged.
At the time, it was a mystery, but in the years that followed, the world faced a crisis that reshaped global behavior overnight. Entire populations were forced to adapt. Entire systems were rewritten. The phrase now feels less like a mystery and more like a prophecy. He spoke of things few had heard of: dark fiber, hidden veins of cable stretching beneath oceans, linking power in secret. A second internet, closed, private, off the books.
I saw underground cables, fiber lines that don't go where they're supposed to.
And he described his last plan: to strike those hidden arteries, to unleash encryption, not as defense, but as a weapon, to expose them by cutting into the very cables that carried their secrets. Imagery? Perhaps. Either way, his mission was to get the information he uncovered to the public. Exposure was his best weapon. Darkness cannot prevail when exposed to the light. And then he vanished. His messages stopped. His presence dissolved. All that remains are his confessions, riddles, warnings, prophecies that seem too dark to be true. Until now. Because 10 years later, today's headlines echo his words. Surveillance, syndicates, influence campaigns, mass corruption and theft, global crises shaping behavior. Hidden cyber wars raging behind the scenes, each revelation tightening the noose of his predictions. The question isn't whether Mr. Blank was right. The question is how much of the future he saw is still waiting for us. He didn't vanish because he was wrong. Maybe he disappeared because he got too close. Or maybe he vanished because he told us too much. He warned us they weren't just watching. They were planning. That what seemed random was not random at all. We listened. And some of us even heard. But then we moved on. Many just laughed. And others called him paranoid. But take a good look at the world we live in now. It goes with his warnings. His ongoing battle is raging behind the scenes at this moment. Right now, as you listen to these words, factions are struggling for control, and your very freedom is hanging in the balance. His fight continues. This isn't the end of the story. If anything, it is just the beginning.
Prepping us for what?
Are you listening? Because his words became real. And whether you like it or not, you're in this story. Thank you for listening. It is now past midnight. So, sleep well.